Have you ever looked at someone and made assumptions based on their appearance? We all do it, right? We see a person, and without even thinking, we judge their story. But what if I told you that the one person you'd least expect is the one who can shatter every belief you have about strength, resilience, and the true meaning of success? Meet Samantha Ray. At first glance, you'd think she's just another face in the crowd. A woman on the streets, struggling to survive, collecting cans for a living. You'd be wrong. Dead wrong. Samantha is a woman with a past, a champion who's walked through fire. She was once a national karate champion. Fierce, unstoppable. But life, as it tends to do, threw curveballs at her. A lost job, mounting bills, and a family to care for, left her with nothing but the clothes on her back and the weight of the world on her shoulders. So, what happens when this woman, this former champion, steps into a dojo full of young, confident fighters who have no idea who she is? What happens when she's laughed at, mocked, and called names, all because of where she's ended up? Does she shrink away? Does she hide behind her past mistakes and let the world write her story for her? Or does she rise? Well, she rises. And when she steps onto that mat, she doesn't just break records. She breaks every assumption people had about her. The very people who laughed at her, who didn't think she had a place in that dojo, would be the first to witness a transformation that no one saw coming. In this video, I'm about to show you how one woman's journey from homeless to hero is more than just a story of martial arts. It's a story about redemption, about strength, and about the power of not letting the world define who you are. Stay tuned, because you won't believe what happens next. And before we dive into the heart of this journey, tell me, where are you watching from? What's your story? Let us know in the comments below. And if you're ready to see how Samantha rewrites the rules, make sure you're subscribed. This is one you won't want to miss. Samantha Ray was the kind of woman you couldn't help but notice, even if she tried her hardest to stay invisible. She had a face that could stop you in your tracks. Strong, confident, yet warm and approachable, with eyes that seemed to carry the weight of 1,000 untold stories. Her skin, a rich, smooth caramel, glowed under the sun, and her smile, when it appeared, had the power to light up a room. But what really stood out about Samantha was her posture. She carried herself with a strength that went far beyond her fit, athletic frame. Despite the worn-out clothes she wore, clothes that had seen better days, there was an undeniable aura of dignity around her. Her body was a reflection of years of discipline. Even though life had knocked her down, her physique was proof that she was no stranger to hard work. Samantha had once been a national karate champion, and the muscles that rippled beneath her faded hoodie and jeans still held the power of someone who had trained tirelessly for years. Her arms were toned, her legs strong, and her core rock solid. You could see the faint outline of a woman who had once been at the top of her game, but now, instead of training for gold medals, she was just trying to get by, collecting cans and recycling, doing whatever she could to survive. She wasn't the type of person you'd expect to see living on the streets, especially not someone with her background. But life had a way of knocking people down when they least expected it, and for Samantha, it had come in the form of overwhelming debt, a sick mother, and the crushing weight of responsibilities that no one had prepared her for. Still, despite everything she had gone through, Samantha never let the world see her break. She stood tall, shoulders back, with a quiet confidence that screamed, "I've been through hell, and I'm still here." But to those who didn't know her, she was just another face in the crowd, a woman in ragged clothes standing by the dumpster, collecting cans. They had no idea that this woman, who had once stood on the winner's podium, had a heart full of dreams that hadn't died yet. At first, Samantha didn't expect much when she started showing up near the dojo. She had no intention of disrupting anyone's class, just a quiet observer, watching from the sidelines as a group of young students practiced their karate. But to them, she was nothing more than a mystery, a woman who hung around, rummaging through the trash, collecting cans like she didn't belong. And for the first few days, that's exactly how they treated her. She was nothing but a shadow in the background. It didn't take long for the whispers to start. The kids, with their carefree attitudes and their own sense of importance, began calling her names behind her back. "Sensei bum," they would snicker. They didn't know her. They didn't know what she'd been through, the struggles she had faced, or the fierce woman she used to be. To them, she was just an oddity, a person who didn't fit the mold of the people they were used to seeing in a dojo. But to Samantha, it didn't matter. She knew all too well what it was like to be underestimated. The laughter didn't stop, but Samantha didn't respond with anger or frustration. She simply stood there, watching with quiet patience, her mind calculating, remembering every move, every stance. She didn't need to prove herself. Not yet. It was easy to laugh at someone when you didn't know their story, when you didn't understand the depth of their strength. But little did they know, Samantha wasn't just some homeless woman who had lost her way. She was a champion, a fighter. And behind those tired eyes was a mind sharper than anyone could imagine. One afternoon, as the students continued their practice, Samantha saw something that made her pause. A young girl, maybe about 10 or 11, was struggling with a particular move, a kick that just wasn't landing right. The more the girl tried, the more frustrated she became. Samantha's heart went out to her. She had been that girl once, struggling to master the perfect technique, feeling like failure was right around the corner. Without a second thought, she stepped closer to the window. From there, she mimicked the movement, showing the girl exactly what needed to be done. The girl caught her eye and, for a moment, hesitation flickered in her gaze. But then she followed the silent advice and nailed the kick. The little girl smiled, proud of her accomplishment, while Samantha stood back, her presence still unnoticed. It was a quiet victory. And yet, the seeds of something bigger had been planted. One afternoon, as Samantha lingered near the back of the dojo, she didn't expect anything to change. She was used to being ignored, to fading into the background. But as she stood there, her eyes tracking the student, after class, as the students filed out, Mr. Harlan made his way toward the door. Samantha didn't notice him approach until he spoke. "You've been watching for a few days now," he said, his voice deep, not unkind. "Would you like to come inside?" Samantha blinked, taken aback by the question. She wasn't sure what to say. There had been so many moments in her life where people had looked past her, dismissed her, without a second thought. But here was someone actually extending an invitation, no questions asked, no judgment passed. It was unexpected, but for some reason, it felt right. "I'm just watching," Samantha said, her voice soft. She didn't want to impose, didn't want to be a burden. Mr. Harlan smiled, a knowing smile. "You can watch all you want. But sometimes, it's better to step onto the mat and see for yourself. We welcome anyone who's serious about learning." The simplicity of his offer hit her hard. She had been waiting for something like this, for someone to see beyond her appearance, beyond her current circumstances. She had always dreamed of returning to the dojo, to teach again, to share the martial arts knowledge that had once been her life. But life had been too complicated. Now, here she was, standing on the threshold of an opportunity she never expected. Samantha hesitated, but only for a moment. There was nothing left to lose. "Okay," she said, her voice steady now. "I'll come in." And just like that, her life was about to take an unexpected turn. Samantha stepped inside the dojo, the smooth wooden floor beneath her feet feeling unfamiliar yet comforting at the same time. The air smelled faintly of leather and sweat, a blend of discipline and determination. As she stood there, the hum of the students practicing their moves filled the space around her. She felt a wave of nervousness, but it wasn't the kind that made her want to run. It was the kind that pushed her to rise to the challenge. She had done this before, in a different time, in a different place. Mr. Harlan gave her a nod of encouragement from the front of the room. "Why don't you try a kata?" he asked, his voice steady, but there was an unspoken challenge in his words. Samantha took a deep breath. This was it. This was the moment she had been waiting for, the chance to prove to herself that she still had it, that she hadn't lost everything to the harshness of life. The students, who had been quietly practicing their own techniques, now turned their attention toward her. She could feel their eyes on her, but instead of being intimidated, she embraced it. She wasn't here to prove anything to them. She was here to remind herself who she was. Samantha stepped to the center of the mat. She placed her feet firmly on the ground, the familiar sense of grounding returning to her. She exhaled slowly, bringing her focus to the present moment. Her muscles remembered the movements, the precise turns, the shifts in weight, and the balance that each kata demanded. She began, her movements flowing with grace and power, as if the years of struggle had never happened. Each strike, each block, was executed with an effortless precision that only years of training could produce. It was more than just technique, it was muscle memory, a reflection of the years she had spent honing her craft. As Samantha completed the kata, there was a stillness in the room. It wasn't just the students who were watching now. It was Mr. Harlan too, his eyes narrowed with concentration, taking in every movement. The silence was heavy, almost reverential, as she finished with a final, decisive strike. The room remained quiet for a beat, the tension in the air palpable. And then, one by one, the students began to clap. It was soft at first, tentative, but it quickly grew louder as they recognized what they had just witnessed. Samantha stood tall, her chest rising with each breath, her heart racing with the thrill of the challenge. She hadn't just completed a kata, she had reclaimed a part of herself that she thought she had lost forever. The applause from the students died down, but the tension in the dojo remained. Samantha could feel the eyes of the room still on her as she moved back to the side, where the rest of the students stood. She hadn't expected this kind of attention, but it was a welcome surprise. A quiet pride swelled within her. She had done what she came to do. She had shown them that she was still a force to be reckoned with. But the tension didn't dissipate. If anything, it seemed to grow, especially from one particular student. Travis, the dojo's most competitive teenager, stepped forward, his eyes narrowed with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. At 17, he was known for his skills and confidence, but there was something about Samantha that seemed to unsettle him. Maybe it was the fact that she had come in and disrupted the flow of their class with a display of expertise that none of them had expected. Travis walked toward her with a smirk on his face, arms crossed. "That was good," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm, "but what's a kata without real action? I mean, anyone can do some choreographed moves, right?" Samantha met his gaze with calm eyes. She wasn't intimidated. "Real action?" she asked, her voice steady. "Is that what you want?" Travis's smirk widened as he glanced back at the rest of the students. "Yeah, I want to see some real action. Let's see how good you are when it's not just about looking pretty in a pattern. You know, actual sparring. Let's see what you've got." The room grew quiet as the students waited for Samantha's response. Travis was daring her, testing her. He thought she was just some old fighter who had faded into the background, someone past their prime who had no place in a dojo full of eager students. But he didn't know Samantha. He didn't know what she had been through, or how long she had fought to hold onto what little she had left. Samantha's lips curled into a slight smile. "All right, Travis. I'll show you real action. But remember," she said, her voice low and firm, "this is about control, not destruction." She wasn't about to let him think that her knowledge of martial arts had faded just because life had thrown her off course. As she moved into position, Travis stood tall, ready to challenge her, his competitive spirit flaring. Samantha could see the fire in his eyes, the same fire she had once had when she was his age. But she wasn't here to compete with him. She was here to teach him a lesson he would never forget. The room was tense, charged with anticipation, as the first move was made. The dojo was silent now, except for the steady breath of the students, who were all watching the standoff between Samantha and Travis. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. The quiet anticipation in the air was almost electric, and even the hum of the lights seemed to fade as everyone's eyes turned to the two standing at the center of the mat. Samantha didn't flinch. She was ready, her mind focused entirely on the task ahead. She had been in situations like this before, pressured to perform, to show the world that she wasn't done yet. But this wasn't just about proving herself to Travis or the others in the room. This was about proving something deeper to herself, that no matter what life had thrown her way, her spirit remained unbroken. Travis stood in front of her, chest puffed out, eager to show off. He was a skilled fighter, no doubt. But there was something in his stance that was more about showing off than real technique. Samantha could see the arrogance in his movements, the lack of control. He wasn't thinking. He was reacting, driven by pride. With a deep breath, Samantha stepped forward, her body fluid and precise. She began her kata, the movements flowing like water. Every step, every strike, every block was a calculated display of the years of training she had put in, the countless hours spent perfecting her craft. She moved with grace and power, each movement effortless yet filled with intent. Travis didn't expect the level of skill she displayed. The way her body moved, every strike coming in perfectly controlled, yet with the kind of force that could break through any barrier. His eyes widened slightly as he watched her, his bravado faltering for the briefest moment. He tried to mirror her movements, but it wasn't the same. His strikes lacked the fluidity, the confidence that came with years of practice. Samantha moved with the flow of the kata, her body a weapon in motion. Each turn, each pivot was executed with a precision that felt like it could tear through the air. She completed the sequence, finishing with a strong, decisive strike, her body standing tall and steady as she held her final pose. For a few moments, there was nothing but silence. Then, slowly, the students began to clap, breaking the tension in the room. The applause was soft at first, hesitant, but quickly grew louder as they realized what they had just witnessed. Samantha had not only completed the kata flawlessly, she had done so with a grace and strength that none of them had expected from a woman they had once mocked. Travis stood frozen for a moment, his mouth slightly agape. He didn't know what to say. This wasn't just a demonstration, it was a revelation. The applause died down, but the atmosphere in the dojo remained thick with tension. Samantha's flawless kata had left everyone in awe, but Travis wasn't done yet. His pride, his competitive nature, wouldn't allow him to just walk away in defeat. The challenge wasn't over, not in his mind. He needed more. He needed to prove something, not just to himself, but to everyone in that room. Travis took a few steps forward, his gaze never leaving Samantha. He squared his shoulders, his expression turning from awe to something more defiant. "All right," he said, voice strong. "That was impressive. But you know, kata is just choreography. It's not real combat. You can't win a fight just by doing fancy moves." Samantha looked at him, her expression calm, unreadable. She had been in this position before, faced challenges from younger, cocky competitors who thought they could show her up. She understood the drive, the need to prove yourself, but she also knew that real strength wasn't about showing off or trying to impress others. It was about control and knowing when to engage and when to hold back. "You want real combat?" Samantha said, her voice steady but with a hint of challenge. "Fine. But remember, Travis, this isn't about winning. It's about showing respect. To me, to you, and to the art." The dojo was eerily silent now, all eyes on the two of them. Travis's expression hardened. He was ready, convinced that this would be his moment to show everyone, especially Samantha, that he was the better fighter. But Samantha wasn't interested in proving who was better. She was interested in teaching him something much more important. Travis squared off, his fists clenched, ready to throw a punch. Samantha waited, her stance relaxed, her body poised like a spring ready to snap, but she was patient. She wasn't going to let her emotions guide her. She wasn't going to be reckless. The first move came from Travis, a quick jab aimed at her face. Samantha blocked it effortlessly, her movements fluid and controlled. Travis tried again, this time with a roundhouse kick, but Samantha was already a step ahead. She dodged, weaving around him with a grace that left him frustrated and off balance. "Come on," Travis grunted, trying again, throwing punch after punch, each one faster and stronger than the last. But Samantha wasn't fazed. She moved with precision, each move calculated, avoiding his attacks with ease. When Travis finally lunged at her, desperation in his eyes, Samantha's movements slowed just enough to let him think he might land a blow. But just as his fist came too close, she stepped aside and gently guided his body to the ground with a smooth, controlled motion. He landed with a thud on the mat, stunned, his breath ragged. The room was silent again, but this time, the silence was filled with respect. Samantha stood tall, her posture relaxed but confident, her eyes calm as she looked down at him. "Strength comes from knowing yourself," she said quietly, offering him a hand. "It's not about how hard you hit. It's about knowing when to fight and when to walk away." Travis, still on the mat, stared up at her, his pride bruised but his respect for her undeniable. For the first time, he understood that the true challenge wasn't about beating someone else, it was about overcoming yourself. As the class settled down after the sparring match, there was a palpable shift in the atmosphere. The tension that had once filled the dojo was now replaced with something else, something more powerful. Respect. It wasn't just the students who felt it, but also the parents watching from the sidelines. The whispers had stopped. The students who had once viewed Samantha as an outsider now looked at her with new eyes, recognizing not just her skill, but her strength, her wisdom, and her ability to teach. Samantha wasn't just here to show off her martial arts prowess, she was here to teach. And what she taught went far beyond punches and kicks. She taught discipline, focus, and most importantly, respect, for oneself and for others. The lesson that night wasn't just about karate, it was about how to face life's challenges, how to fall and get back up, and how to never let others define your worth. In the days that followed, something remarkable began to happen in the dojo. The students, once divided by their different skill levels, began to unite under a shared respect for one another. Even Travis, who had once mocked Samantha, found himself listening more intently, not just in class but in life as well. The way he carried himself shifted. He was no longer driven by the need to prove himself to others. Instead, he started focusing on becoming the best version of himself. The parents, too, started to see things differently. At first, many had been skeptical about Samantha's place in the dojo. There were murmurs, doubts about whether someone with her past, someone who had been homeless, could truly have the right to teach their children. But as they watched her work with the kids, as they saw the impact she had on their behavior and focus, their concerns began to fade. They saw the change in their children, how they became more disciplined, more respectful, more willing to help each other. One afternoon, Jennifer Adams, Leo's mom, approached Mr. Harlan after class. "You know," she said, "I wasn't sure about Samantha at first. But after seeing how she works with Leo and the others, I can't deny it. She's not just teaching them karate. She's teaching them how to live." Mr. Harlan nodded, a small smile on his face. "That's the real lesson. Martial arts is just the tool. It's about shaping character." Samantha's influence in the dojo was undeniable. The kids who had once looked past her now sought her advice, eager to learn from the woman who had overcome so much. And the community that had once looked at her with judgment now saw her as a beacon of hope. She had transformed not only her own life but the lives of everyone around her, reminding them that strength wasn't just about physical power, it was about resilience, dignity, and the courage to rise again, no matter how many times life knocked you down. As the weeks went by, Samantha found herself stepping into a new rhythm, not just in the dojo but in her life. The respect she had earned from the students, the parents, and even the skeptical few who had doubted her, was a bittersweet reminder of how far she had come. But with success came new challenges. The dojo had become her sanctuary, a place where she could teach and share what she knew, but it wasn't without its hurdles. She wasn't just teaching karate, she was teaching life. And sometimes, life wasn't as simple as following a series of moves or perfecting a form. One day, after class, a young boy named Michael approached her, his eyes filled with hesitation. "Sensei, can I ask you something?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Samantha crouched down to his level, her eyes kind but firm. "Of course, Michael. What's on your mind?" "I'm scared," he said, his voice cracking. "Scared that I'm not strong enough, that I won't be able to keep up with the others." Her heart softened, and she placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Listen, Michael," she began, her tone calm and steady. "Strength isn't about being the best. It's about doing your best, no matter where you start. Everyone has their own pace. What matters is that you keep moving forward, even when it feels hard." Michael nodded, his face lighting up with a small, hopeful smile. "You really think I can do it?" Samantha smiled back. I know you can. The first step is believing in yourself. In moments like these, Samantha realized the true power of her role. She wasn't just passing on techniques or forms, she was teaching her students the value of resilience, the importance of believing in themselves, and the strength found in persistence. But these weren't lessons only for her students. She had her own battles to fight, her own fears to face. Even though the dojo had become her new home, the memories of her past, the nights spent alone, the struggle to make ends meet, sometimes crept back into her thoughts. Yet, with each passing day, she grew stronger. The challenges she faced were no longer obstacles, but stepping stones, pushing her toward the life she had always dreamed of. The community had embraced her, and she had embraced them in return. And in those quiet moments, when she saw the kids practice their moves with confidence or heard their parents praise her work, she realized that her success wasn't measured by accolades or records, but by the impact she had on the lives of those around her. Every time one of her students overcame their fears, every time they stood a little taller, Samantha knew that she had found her true success. It had been months since Samantha first stepped into the dojo, but it felt like a lifetime. Each day, she faced new challenges, some small, some larger than she could have ever imagined. But through it all, one thing had become clear: she wasn't just rebuilding her life, she was redefining it. Samantha's reputation had grown within the dojo, not because of her past, but because of the woman she had become. The students had come to respect her not just for her skill, but for her strength of character. She wasn't just a coach, she was a mentor, someone who had walked through the darkest of times and emerged stronger because of it. Yet, even with the progress she had made, there were still moments of doubt. Every now and then, she'd catch herself staring at the worn photograph in her wallet, the one of her and her late mother, and wonder if she was truly worthy of this new life. Was she really meant to be here, in this dojo, teaching these kids? Would her past always be something that held her back? But then there was Leo, the small, determined boy who had believed in her from the start. He was growing, both in his skills and in his confidence, and she remembered the first time Leo came to her, unsure of his abilities. His nervousness had been evident, but through her guidance, she saw him grow. Watching him break his first board, his face glowing with excitement and pride, made her realize that this was the real reward. It wasn't the physical act of breaking the board. It was the confidence he had gained in himself, the belief that he was capable of more than he had ever imagined. For Samantha, the most important lesson she had learned was that success wasn't about accolades or the recognition of others. It was about showing up, facing the challenges head-on, and helping others see their own potential. Her own transformation, from a woman struggling to survive to a respected instructor, had taught her that the most powerful thing you can do in life is to live with purpose, integrity, and a willingness to help others along the way. And in the end, that was worth more than any trophy could ever be.